Haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tes Zayin Amud Aleph, the fifth line from the top. The Gemara presented the Mishnah in Tamid, where it states that in regards to the various lishkos, then the Beis HaMoiked was the area in the northern area of the Azara. Part of it was inside the Azara, part of it was outside the Azara. Of course, the part that was inside had Kedusha, the part outside was Chol. And there was 4 lishkos, one on each corner. The Mishnah in Talmud says the lishka is Beis Hatloim, where they would keep the lambs for the Korban Talmud. They'd have at least 6 lambs there that were already checked, unblemished. That was located, says the Mishnah in Talmud, in the northwestern corner, which was the lishka of the Beis Hatloim. However, the Mishnah states in Midos, a different Masechta, that the area where the lishka was located for the Beis Hatloim was indeed not the northwest, but rather the southwest corner. So now the Gemara is left with a contradiction. Says the Gemara to answer, Omer Rav Huna Mantana Midos. Who is the author of Maseches Midos? Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov he. That is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, and therefore the Maseches Tamid, which differs, is a different opinion. That's the opinion of the Chachamim. Disnan. Now we prove that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is the Stam Tana of Maseches Midos. It says in the Mishnah in Midos, Ezra's Noshim Haisa Arech 135 Al Rochav 135. The Ezra's Noshim was 135 amos by 135 amos. The Arba Lishkois Hoyu Bedaled Miksoiseho. There were 4 lishkos in the 4 corners of the Ezra's Noshim. Umma Hayu Meshamshos asked the Mishnah, what did they use each lishka for? Droimis Mizrochis Hihaisa Lishkas Hanizirim. The southeastern corner, where that lishka was found, that chamber was called the Lishkas Hanizorim. What was it used for? Says the Mishnah, Sheshom Nizirim Mevashlin Shalmeim. There they would cook their korban shlomim. Umegalchin sa'aron. They would also shave their hair. Umashalchin tachas hadud. And they would place that hair underneath the pot that was cooking the korban shlomim. Mizrachi tzvoinis hi haisa lishkas dirayitz eitzim. The northeastern corner was the lishka of the dir ha'eitzim, where they would keep the wood that they would be using for the mizbeach. Shesham kohanim bale mumin oimdin matlin be'eitzim. The kohanim that could not do the avodah, they had mumin. They would be there to check the eitzim to ensure that didn't have any taloim, any worms. Shekol eit sheyesh boy tolaz posel legabe mizbeach. Because a wood that did have worms in it certainly cannot be used for the mizbeach. Tzvoinis marovis hi haisa lishkas hamitzaroim. The northwestern lishka was used for the mitzaroim. Mitzaroim had a whole process that they'd have to go through. When the mitzara was finally then, after 7 days, and he brought his korbanos, and he was megaleach, as well as he was toiv on the mikvah, as well as his clothing, then he had to then bring those korbanos 7 days later, come back and also megaleach, his hair, whereby this time the blood of the korban asham had to be then put on his right ear, the right big thumb, and the right big toe. However, since the blood of the korban asham cannot be taken out of the azara, and he, as somebody who was mechusar kippurim, that means that he himself could not go into the makom mikdash, as well as certainly can't eat kachim. So what would he do? The process of the mitzvah was he would go to the Shar Nikanor, and he would then lean over so that the dam could be placed in these 3 areas. Again, the right earlobe, the right thumb, and the right big toe. So this is the lishka of Mitzaroim, where they would also be toivel there. Marovis droimis, the southwestern corner. Omer Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov shachachti mahisa mishameshes. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, I forgot what that lishka was used for. The Mishnah goes on to say, Abashol oimer bo hayu noisnin yayin v'shemen. In that lishka they would store wine and oil, wine for the libations, oil for both the menorah as well as for the various korban menachos. V'haisa nikres lishkas Beis Shamnaya. It was called the lishka of the Beis Shamnaya because there was more shemen that was stored there than wine, so it had then the name of the shemen, Beis Shamnaya. Al Kopanim, we see from over here that in the fourth lishka, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov did not know what was the usage. Is mashma that until now the Stam Mishnah was his own opinion. So not only that, but now we see that when it comes to Stam Mishnah in Midos, Maseches Midos, we find that the Stam author in Maseches Midos is Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So therefore we can use that to miyashev the question we had before, that he is the author Maseches Midos, that says that is the southwestern corner where the Beis HaTloim is located. And that which it states in Maseches Tamid, that it's the northwestern corner, that is somebody else, that's the Chachamim. Now the Gemara wants to bolster what it just said, that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov is indeed the Stam Tana of Maseches Midos. Hochanami mistabro. The Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, indeed it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. This nan, because we have a Mishnah that's a Stam Mishnah. It says, Kol haksalim shahayu shom hayu gevoin. All of the walls that were there in the Temple Mount, that was all tall walls. Chutz mikoisel mizrachi, with the exception of the easternmost wall. Shehakoyin hasoref es hapora oimeid behar hamishcha. The kohen who was burning the para aduma, he had to do that outside the Makom Mikdash on the east side in Har HaMishcha, which was Har HaZeisim. Umekchavin v'roya pischa shel heicha b'shas hazos hadam. There it was required that he would sprinkle the dam towards, it would be towards the west, toward the east wall of the Azar, but towards the west, because he was on the east side of the Mikdash. And he would also at the same time be able to look, he would have to be able to look and see the Heichal. So over here, this Tana is saying for him to do that, since the way that the Har HaBayis, the Temple Mount, was set up, was that it had different levels. And therefore, ultimately, when you got to the Heichal, it was a much higher level than the ground of the eastern wall. So he says the eastern wall had to be lower than the other walls in order to then peer over the wall and see the Heichal. Otherwise, the Kohen HaSarv would not be able to then mekayim his procedure of burning the Parah Aduma properly. So that's the Stam Mishnah. Vitnan, it says other places in Midos. Now the Gemara is going to bring various Mishnayos and Midos to ultimately prove that this author has Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. And again, it has to be because otherwise he wouldn't have to then see, he wouldn't have to be able to see the Heichal unless it was a lower wall. Says the Mishnah. All of the walls were 20 amos tall, with a width of 10 amos. Vitnan, and it says in the Mishnah, lifnim mimenu sareg. Within that area was the sareg. Sareg was a certain fence area. Vitnan lifnim mimenu hachel. Inside of that sareg area was what's called the chel. Eser amos of 10 amos. That was the space, the area. There were 12 steps to get from that outer area into the chel. In other words, to get to the Ezras Nashim, were 12 steps. From there, and each step had a height of a half a amma, and also where the foot was placed, each step was also an amma. Vitnan, so we see from there that if it was 12 amos and 12 steps, and each step was a half amma, so now we have to ascend another 6 amos from where we were before. To get to the Ezras Nashim was another 6 amos higher. Vitnan, and it says in the Mishnah, Tesvav Mailis Oilois Mitoicha Hayardas Me Ezras Yisrael the Ezras Nashim. In other words, to descend from the Ezras Nashim to the Ezras Yisrael required a 15 milos, and therefore that it again was room maila chetzi am v'shilcha chetzi amma, where each height was a half a amma, And that was another, therefore, half of 15 steps would be another 7.5 amos here to get to the higher level from the Ezras Nashim to the now Ezras Yisrael. The area between the ulam and the mizrach was 22 amos. And there were 12 steps that were there to get to the Pesach HaUlam. Rum Maila Chetzi Amo Vishilcha Amo. And here again, each step was a half a amo. So if you had 12 steps, again it's another 6 amos that you have to ascend higher. And here we're talking about to get to the additional area of the Heichal. The Tnan, and it says, so that Mishnah that we just said now implies that indeed if you add all of this up to get to the Heichal, that means that you had to go from the most eastern part of the Har HaBayis, and we said you go up another 6 amos plus another 6 amos and another 7.5 amos. So that means it's 19.5 amos higher than where it was in the Karka from where we started. Vitnan, and it says, however, in the Mishnah in Midos, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Oimer, Mailo Haisa Sham, there was indeed a step there. That means he's talking about really between the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim. There was an area, and there was an additional step, Vigvoya Amma, which was an Amma tall, Viduchon Nosun Alel, and there was a platform on it where the Levim will sing during the Avodah. Uboit Shloish Mailo Shel Chetzi Chetzi Amma, and over there was 3 steps, each one a half a Amma. If we calculate all of this, if we say an additional Amma plus another 3 steps, which is a half a step each, another Amma and a half, so 2.5 Ammas plus the 19.5 will bring us to 22 Amos, that the Heichal is located higher than the original Karka of the most eastern part of the Har HaBayis. So therefore, it comes out that if you want to say that indeed this Stam Mishnah that we quoted in the beginning, being as the line became wide, and we quoted a Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah that said the shortest, even though all the walls are tall, but the shortest, most eastern part had to be a shorter wall. That's going to be good if you say it's Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. Why? The idea is because in order for the Kohen HaSoref to be able to see the Heichal from where he's located, he'd have to then look up. He'd have to look above to then see the Heichal. And that's very good because we said that Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov is the one who says that it's 22 amos higher than the Karka. So in order to then see the Heichal, you'd have to look up. However, according to the other opinion, that says only 19.5 amos, so then you don't have to look up. You can just look through the gateways of all of these walls, which are in line with each other, and you can look straight into the Heichal. So the Gemara speaks that out now. It's very good if you want to say it's Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who's a Stam Tano Hainu di Ikase le Pischa. That is because it is closed. That means that there's no place to see. You'd have to look over in order to then see the Heichal, because again it's closed up in order to then get to the appearance of the Heichal. Since the Heichal is 22 amos, it's much higher than where you were before with this wall. Eliyam is Rabbanon. But if you want to say it's the Rabbanon, which we're saying is only 19.5 amos difference between there and where the most eastern part Karka was, then then you can use that upper half of Amma, which is then, let's say after 19.5, you have the top half as a gateway to look straight across into the Heichal. So that would be fine. Rather, we conclude that the Stam Tan is Rebbe Eliezer ben Yaakov. Once we can conclude that from over here, we bolstered what we said before, that he's the Stam Tana in Maseches Midos, and thereby we were able to miyashev the steer that we started off with. Again, we said the Beis HaTloim, according to Maseches Tamid, states that it was in the northwestern corner of the Beis HaMoiked, whereas The Maseches Midos says it was in the southwestern corner. On that we're answering because the Stam Tana in Midos is Rabbi Lesin Yaakov, and he's the one who says, therefore, the Beis HaTolim was in the southwestern corner, and he's arguing on the Tana, on the Chachamim who say it was on northwestern corner in Maseches Tamid.